Just before I was about to turn in for the night, I accidentally eavesdropped on a strange conversation between my son and his wife. Once Thanksgiving's over, he's off to the nursing home, was what I caught. Shocked, I barged in, slammed open the door, and yelled, "Not so fast! Before anything, there's something I need you to watch." I hit play on the TV, and as soon as the footage started, my daughter-in-law just fainted from the surprise. I'm Edward, and I've got 67 years under my belt. Just 2 years ago, I felt like my world ended when Martha, my wonderful wife, lost her battle with cancer. But it turned out I was wrong. It wasn't over yet. The little I had left was about to be snatched away, and it was all thanks to the ones I trusted most. It was the night before Thanksgiving, and there I was, shuffling down the hallway in my favorite slippers, headed to the kitchen for my usual pre-sleep treat, warm milk. Since Martha passed, this became my nightly comfort. She used to make it, with just the right touch of honey, and now I do it myself as a way to keep her close. The house was quiet, with only the faint murmur of voices drifting in from the living room. Seemed like my son Leonard and his wife Ava were deep in a serious discussion. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but their conversation carried, and Ava's coldness perked my ears. "After Thanksgiving, he's definitely moving into the facility," she said flatly. "I've already talked with Sunset Manor, and they've got a place for him next week." Her words were like ice water in my veins. I found myself leaning on the wall, my heart pounding so loud it was a miracle they didn't hear it. "Do you think the timing's right?" Leonard sounded unsure, like he wasn't totally down with the idea, more like he was fretting about pulling it off. "What if he starts suspecting?" Ava just gave a sarcastic laugh. "Really, Leonard? What could he possibly do? He's fully dependent on us. Plus, we've been more than gracious. Your dad's using up the entire guest room, and honestly, I'm tired of tiptoeing around him. It's just cramped with 3 adults here." "But remember, he paid part of the house," Leonard tried to counter, though his voice lacked real fight. "He put down $25,000, all of his savings, and we appreciate it," she said smoothly. "That's why we're not leaving him out in the cold. Sunset Manor's nice, they have good care. He'll be better off there." It felt like someone had grabbed my heart and squeezed the life out of it. That $25,000 was everything I had, saved up over 43 grueling years working at the steel plant. A nest egg Martha and I had for our future and for our family's well-being. I handed it to Leonard and Ava so they could buy this place, never thinking it would come back to haunt me like this. "What about the rest of his money?" Leonard asked. "His pension, Social Security. We have power of attorney, don't forget," Ava said, sounding quite satisfied with herself. "When he's settled into the home and showing he needs constant care, then we get all his finances. The pension's $1,800 each month, with Social Security that's nearly $3,000 monthly for the house." The walls were closing in around me. I clung to the doorframe, barely managing to stay upright. They were planning not just to discard me, but to siphon every dime I had, dump me in a home, and take over all my finances. Leonard's voice turned a bit softer, tinged with guilt. "Sometimes I just feel bad." "Don't," Ava shot back quickly. "He's lived his life, raised you, had a marriage, a career. Now it's about us," she pressed. "We are still young, Leonard. We deserve to live without some old man getting in our way, leaving pill bottles everywhere and hogging the bathroom every morning." An old man. That's all I was to them. Not Leonard's dad, not the guy who pulled endless double shifts to put him through college, not the one who stood beside him on his wedding day when his own father wasn't around. Just a worn-out, inconvenient presence in their lives. Standing there in my PJs and ragged slippers, I felt so incredibly small. The real blow wasn't just in the words they used or Ava's apathy. It was realizing that my life wasn't as solid as I'd believed, The last couple of years had been a roller coaster. Every time someone asked, "How's it going, Dad?" or said, "Glad to have you with us," it all felt pretty fake. Ava went further and said, "The documents are signed. I've explained that he's got early dementia and can't make decisions himself anymore." When Leonard weakly objected, saying, "But he doesn't have dementia," it didn't seem to make a difference. "Who'll even find out?" Ava retorted. "He's just an old guy, dealing with grief and all confused. The staff at Sunset Manor sees this stuff all the time. Adult kids who can't carry the weight anymore." That word, weight, was like a blow I didn't see coming. I thought of everything I'd done to pull my share since moving in. Cooking dinner 3 times a week, keeping the yard tidy, using part of my pension for groceries now and then. I took care of their temperamental old furnace and fixed every leaky pipe and creaky door. I thought I was pitching in, earning my place. But to Ava, I was only a weight. "When will we tell him?" Leonard wondered aloud. "We don't," Ava replied with a sense of finality. "Come Monday morning, we'll pack his things, drive him over there. A clean break, no drama, no arguments, no guilt trips. By Monday evening, the house is just ours again." I couldn't take any more of it. My legs felt like they might buckle under me, so I quietly made my way back to my room. Each step was like wading through thick mud. Once back in the room, I gently closed the door and sat heavily on the bed. Suddenly, everything seemed different. It hit me that this wasn't really my room, more like a guest room, and I was just a temporary visitor, soon to be moved on. I looked around at all the things I'd called mine. Martha's picture on the nightstand, my clothes taking up half the closet, my meds on the dresser. 2 years of putting together this makeshift life, all set to be packed up for Sunset Manor. As I sat there in silence, betrayal gnawed at me, slowly fueling a fire of anger. They thought I was just a confused old guy who'd go along with whatever they planned. They had no idea who they were up against. I didn't survive 43 years in a steel mill by being a pushover. I didn't raise Leonard alone after we lost his mother without fighting through some tough times. And there was no way I was going to let a scheming daughter-in-law and my spineless son take my life away without a fight. Leonard and Ava seriously underestimated me. Thanksgiving was right around the corner, and they had no clue about the feast I had in store for them. I couldn't sleep at all that night. The words, "old man, wait," haunting me every time I tried. By 5 a.m., I gave up on getting any rest and settled into my chair, watching the sun rise over the neighborhood I helped them settle into. This house, this beautiful 2-story place with its wraparound porch and tall oak trees, he owed to me. Not only did I put down $25,000, everything Martha and I had saved, but I'd spent almost every weekend for the past 2 years, fixing, improving, maintaining. I'd redone the bathroom plumbing, rewired the risky kitchen electricals, painted every room but their master bedroom. Blood, sweat, and savings poured into turning that house into a home, and they wanted to toss me aside like an old magazine. As I sat there steaming, my anger from the night before transformed into something stronger, more resolute. Memories of Leonard's childhood came flooding back, so different from now. His mom passed when he was 16. Cancer, like Martha. At 34, I was working hard at the mill while trying to take care of a heartbroken teenager. I could have married again. Plenty of women showed interest, but Leonard was shattered after losing his mom, and bringing someone new into the mix felt impossible. Instead, I put everything into supporting him. I worked extra hours to pay for his college and would drive 3 hours each way every weekend during his early years at college when he was homesick and struggling. I made sure to cover the cost of his big wedding with Ava, a $15,000 bash that nearly cleaned out what little savings I had after helping with his schooling. I remember that wedding day like it was yesterday. Ava wanted a fancy venue, opulent flowers, the works. Leonard came to me feeling awkward, but clearly needing help. "Dad, just until we get ourselves sorted out," he begged. "Ava's family has these big expectations for the wedding." I should have realized it then. They had all these grand plans, but no money coming from their side. Someone else always ended up covering Ava's dreams. But I agreed because I loved my son and wanted him to be happy. So I ended up emptying the small investment account Martha and I had saved up and handed over $15,000 to Leonard. I convinced myself it was all worth it, just to see him happy when he tied the knot. Looking back, I see it clearly. I wasn't really supporting Leonard's happiness. I was buying a temporary thumbs up from Ava. That's when the clock started ticking. Over these past 2 years living with them, things I thought were gestures of love now look different. Remembering how Ava used to include me at dinner every night, I once thought she was being welcoming. Now I see she was just keeping tabs on me, making sure I didn't stray too far or form bonds with anyone outside their family. When Leonard brought up the idea of me moving in with them instead of staying in the apartment I shared with Martha, I thought he just wanted to help. Now I realize it was just about cutting me off from familiar faces, my regular life, and my independence. And when they suggested adding their names to my bank account for emergencies, I thought it was just smart planning. Now I know it was part of taking control over my finances. The hardest part was realizing how isolated I had become. Back at my apartment, there was Mrs. Rodriguez who'd check in on me every day. Coffee on Tuesdays with Frank, my old work buddy, was a thing. I had my rhythm, my independence, and my sense of self-respect. Here, I was only allowed what Leonard and Ava decided I could have. But they slipped up. They assumed 2 years of their games would make me defenseless, forgetting a vital piece of who I am. I'm 67, but not clueless. I ran a crew of 30 at the steel mill for over 20 years. I've gone toe-to-toe with union reps and plant bosses, solving real problems and making decisions that mattered. Those skills don't fade just because you stop working. With this in mind, I quietly got ready and went downstairs. Leonard and Ava were still asleep, giving me a moment to breathe and plan. At the kitchen table, coffee in hand, I sat down with a notepad, just like back when I was tackling issues at the mill. My first move was gathering intel. I headed to Leonard's office where he kept all the household stuff. I helped set it up when they moved, so I knew right where everything was. My heart dropped when I found a folder labeled Dad's Documents. Inside were papers completely new to me, power of attorney forms with a signature looking suspiciously like mine, memory tests hinting at early dementia from a doctor I've never met, and, most shocking of all, papers for a place named Sunset Manor with my info and a deposit already down. My hands shook as I sorted through it all. This wasn't just some sudden plan. It had been unfolding for months, maybe longer. Every time Ava urged me to check out a new doctor for supposed memory issues, she was actually crafting a paper trail to back up their lie. I used my phone to snap photos of everything. Martha gave me that smartphone for my 65th birthday and taught me the ropes, saying, "You never know when you'll need a snapshot, Eddie." She certainly wasn't wrong. Next, I peeked at their financial papers. Leonard was careless. Bank statements lay right there on his desk. What I found made my blood boil. They'd been indulging themselves with my money, a $5,000 weekend getaway to Napa just last month, and Ava's shiny new car, a sleek Beamer that, in just half a year at the mill, I'd earned way less than what Leonard spent on his $800 a month golf club membership. It felt like they were draining my savings just to live a lifestyle they couldn't afford. And their next target? My pension and Social Security, basically anything that could fund their endless indulgence. I made sure to snap photos of any document that hinted at their deceit. But the real shocker hit when I found Ava's personal phone sitting right there on the kitchen counter, charging away. I already knew her passcode. It was Leonard's birth date. Her text messages revealed everything. Messages with her sister talked about how Leonard's dad was moving into his new place, giving them the privacy they'd been craving. There was also a guy named Rick in her texts, and their conversation made my skin crawl. They chatted about their little friendship and her big plans for freedom once they got rid of me. But the most damning messages were with someone from Sunset Manor, detailing my so-called aggressive behavior, setting up for a plan to keep me drugged and compliant. They weren't planning to just clean me out. They wanted me as a puppet. I screenshot every incriminating text and sent them to my phone. After wiping any trace of my snooping from her phone, I sat in their kitchen, heavy with their betrayal. But amid all that betrayal, I felt something inside me ignite, a purpose I hadn't felt in ages. It reminded me of handling crises at the mill when everyone looked to me for solutions. Leonard and Ava thought they were taking advantage of a helpless old man. They were wrong. With Thanksgiving tomorrow, I was gearing up for a revealing dinner they wouldn't forget. Thanksgiving morning dragged in, cold and dreary, perfectly reflecting my mood. I was up with the sun, making coffee in a quiet house, while Leonard and Ava slept in. For the first time in ages, I found an odd sort of calm. There's an odd freedom in knowing exactly where you stand, even if it's right at the edge. I spent the day before finalizing my plans, making sure everything was ready to go. This Thanksgiving would be our last hurrah as a so-called family, though Leonard and Ava didn't have a clue. By 7 a.m., I was already busy in the kitchen, starting on the turkey. Ava had delegated the cooking to me weeks ago, a gesture I first mistook for family involvement. Now I understood. She just wanted me to handle the hard work so she could shine in her role as hostess. And oddly enough, that fit right into my plan, my last act of labor for their benefit. I cooked up the 20-pound turkey using Martha's old recipe, one I'd relied on for 30 years. As I prepared the meal, I thought back on the Thanksgivings Martha and I hosted when Leonard was a kid. Our tiny apartment kitchen back then could barely fit the turkey, yet we always found ways to feed Leonard and his college buddies. Those were real family gatherings, filled with laughter and genuine gratitude. This event was shaping up to be something entirely different. Around 9, Leonard shuffled downstairs in his pajamas, looking for coffee. He seemed restless, probably thinking about their plan for Monday. Good. Let that guilt eat at him. "Morning, Dad," he said, trying to sound calm. "Turkey smells fantastic." "Just like your mother used to make," I replied, concentrating on the potatoes I was peeling. She always thought Thanksgiving was about being thankful for family. Seeing him squirm at my words was oddly satisfying. Leonard had always been a terrible liar, a trait he got from his mom, who couldn't keep a secret if her life depended on it, a quality I'd always loved about her. "Yeah, well, Mom had a knack for making everything feel special," Leonard mumbled as he poured himself some coffee. "She really did," I agreed, "and she always told me that sticking by family was the most important thing, no matter what." Leonard's hand shook slightly as he took a sip, and I could tell my words were sinking in. He excused himself, probably heading off to tell Aya about my strange mood. Let him. I wanted them both on edge today. Ava showed up around 10:30, wearing a fancy cream sweater that probably cost more than my. Ava looked like she was dressed for a big event, even though it was just the three of us for dinner. She always seemed to be putting on a show. I was getting the feeling her whole marriage to my son was more of a performance. "You've been quite the busy bee," she noted, flashing a smile that didn't reach her eyes as she glanced around the kitchen. "It all looks amazing." "I wanted today to be special," I said, holding her gaze. I had a hunch it was going to be a day to remember. Her polished exterior faltered briefly before she went back to fussing with the table, adjusting things that didn't need adjusting. She seemed nervous, not that I minded. While they went about pretending nothing was out of the ordinary, I wrapped up my own preparations. Last night, I'd hidden a digital recorder in the living room, sneaking it behind one of Ava's plush throw pillows. Plus, I had my laptop ready in my room, wirelessly hooked up to the TV, thanks to Leonard's tech setup from last Christmas. Everything was ready to go. Dinner had an obvious tension, even if Leonard and Ava were blissfully unaware of how obvious they were. They kept exchanging quick glances, and Ava guided the chat to safe, unexciting topics like the weather or Leonard's work. Oddly, no one mentioned weekend plans, which was odd since Ava usually couldn't stop blabbing about her Black Friday shopping. "This turkey's great, Dad," Leonard said as he sliced a piece. "You really outdid yourself." "I wanted it to be perfect," I replied. "After all, this might be our last family dinner for a while." That stopped them in their tracks. Ava's fork froze, and Leonard's chewing slowed. "What do you mean?" Ava asked carefully. I shrugged, playing it off. "Oh, just that with all the holiday chaos, people get caught up in their own stuff. Families can drift apart without even realizing it." Leonard was quick to counter that. "That's not happening to us. We're family. We stick together." Hearing him say that, knowing he was planning to ditch me in 2 days, was almost laughable, but I kept my face straight. "Yeah, family is everything," I agreed. After dinner, we moved to the living room for coffee and some pumpkin pie I'd made with love. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. "You know," I said, settling into an armchair with my cup, "I've been thinking a lot about family memories and the importance of preserving the truth." Ava and Leonard, seated next to each other on the couch, started looking more uneasy. "The truth?" Ava asked tentatively. "Yes," I replied, reaching for the TV remote. "It's funny how differently people can remember things compared to how they really happened, so I thought documenting important conversations was a smart move." Leonard was starting to look a bit uncomfortable. "Dad, what are you talking about?" he asked. "I think it'll make more sense if you see for yourselves," I said, turning on the TV. The screen lit up with my laptop display, showing neatly labeled files of all the damning evidence I'd gathered the night before. Ava's eyes widened. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice shaky. "This," I said calmly, "is the real story of our family." I opened the first file, and the speakers erupted with a recording of their conversation from just a couple nights ago. Their voices echoed, clear as day. "Once Thanksgiving's over, he's going to the care home. I've already set it up with Sunset Manor. They're ready for him next week." Leonard's coffee cup hit the floor with a crash, and Ava went pale, hearing herself talk about drugging me into cooperation. "Turn it off," she murmured, her voice tinged with desperation, but I was just getting in the groove. "Oh, we're just gearing up," I said, moving along to the next file. The big screen was plastered with blown-up screenshots of her conversations, Ava conspiring with her sister to offload the old man, her chats with Rick about their fling and what happens when I'm out of the picture, all with Leonard's name peppered throughout the drama. Sunset Manor was silent, apart from the heated discussion inside. I'd had enough of being the nice guy and staying mum about my situation, especially after Leonard and Ava's latest plot. They were spinning a tale of me being mentally unstable, even giving the thumbs up to dose me with sedatives if I caused a scene. "You can't do this," Ava objected, wavering slightly, but I knew better. "Oh, but I can," I shot back. Everything I did was within my rights. I'd recorded everything at home, all relevant to my life. A simple entitlement. One more click unveiled how they'd burned through my $25,000 down payment on extravagant purchases. The evidence was staggering. "Dad, please," Leonard began, but I silenced him with my hand up. "I'm not through yet," I said, moving to the final proof. It was a video from earlier that morning, right in the very room, showing me calm and collected. I laid out their scheme to falsify my mental state, cheat me out of my pension and Social Security, and stash me in a nursing home pumped with meds. This video, like all the rest, I pointed out as my image spoke on screen, is already with my lawyer, the police, and the state's chief legal authority to kickstart an elder abuse investigation. That's when Ava couldn't hold it in anymore. She let out a sharp cry before slipping off the couch. Leonard tried to help her but was too slow. Seeing him kneel by his unconscious wife filled me with nothing but a sharp chill of satisfaction. "Here's the kicker," I added coolly, as Leonard frantically tried to wake Ava. "I was actually willing to roll with whatever you two cooked up. Figured you knew what was best." Leonard looked up, tears barely held back. "Dad, I'm so sorry. We can fix this." I shook my head. "Some things you can't mend, but you can sure pay for." As Ava started coming around, groaning, I headed to my room. There were calls to make, deals to seal, and the real Thanksgiving meal was on the horizon. The room hung in an eerie quiet. Ava lay on the floor, and Leonard was beside her with a damp cloth from the kitchen. She mumbled about lawyers and screw-ups in her creased, coffee-stained holiday outfit, hair all frizzed out. I hung back by the TV, remote still in my hand, staring with this odd, newfound clarity now that the ruse was up. "Give me a hand to get her on the couch," Leonard pleaded. I held my ground. "She'll be okay. Shock fades," I reassured him softly. Leonard managed to prop Ava up against the sofa, and she slowly focused on me, her eyes now staring with terror I hadn't seen before. "You have no right," she muttered. "Oh, but I do," I replied calmly. "Those chats were private, but they were about taking my money and drugging me. I've got every right." "It's not your house," she snapped. I smiled genuinely for what felt like the first time in ages. "Actually, Ava, you're mistaken." Leonard looked confused. "What are you talking about?" he asked. "You see," I explained, "when I handed over that $25,000 as a down payment, I didn't just give you the money and walk away. I was there for the closing. I signed the documents. I'm a partial owner based on what I put in." Leonard's face went ghostly as he remembered the details. "But the lawyer said what I told him to, that it was a gift to the family. But the real paperwork tells the real story. I hold 37% ownership in this house, Leonard. You can't sell it, and you can't kick me out without my nod." Ava wobbled to her feet, barely steady. "No way. We would have known." "You would have if you'd bothered reading what you signed instead of rushing to snatch my cash," I concluded, moving toward Leonard's desk where reality would double down on them. I returned to my office and grabbed a folder I'd already prepared earlier. It had all the closing documents, and my share of the property was highlighted a bright yellow. 37%, I said, placing the papers on the coffee table. "And since you've been using my pension to help foot the mortgage bill for the last couple of years, my stake actually increased. My lawyer tells me I now hold about 42% of this place." Leonard stared at the papers like they might burst into flames at any moment. "Why didn't you say anything?" he demanded. I responded with a shrug. "I thought we were all in this together. I had faith in you guys like family. It's a shock you'd try to pull one over on me and shove me into a home." Ava seemed to gather herself, and with that comes her typical bluntness. "You're just a crafty old man," she shot back. "You deceived us." "No, I just looked out for myself," I corrected her, a skill I'd honed over 43 years in the steel mill, dodging people who thought they could short-change me. She lunged at the TV remote I was holding, demanding it be turned off, hoping to erase everything. But I easily held it out of reach. "Sorry, Ava. It's too late for that. It's all in the cloud now and shared with a few trusted people. Even if you destroy my laptop, the proof is safe." Leonard skimmed through the deed, growing paler with each page. "Dad, this turns everything on its head. We had no idea you had a stake in the house." "No, it doesn't change a thing," I countered. "You still intended to scam me. You lied to doctors, faked reports about my mental state. You plotted to drug me and take my money. Just because you didn't expect me to push back doesn't make your actions any less despicable." Ava was pacing, hands trembling with fury. "Criminal acts?" she scoffed. "We're your family. We only wanted to take care of you. By deceiving doctors about my mental health? By planning to sedate me? By sneaking off with my pension?" I shook my head. "That's not care. That's elder abuse and, in fact, a crime." The mention of crime hit them hard, making Leonard slump into his chair and freezing Ava in her tracks. "What do you want?" Leonard inquired quietly. "I want my self-respect back," I stated firmly. "I want to live my own life, and I want both of you out of it." "You can't just kick us out," Ava objected. "Even with your share, we still own most of the house." "True," I admitted, "but I can make living here very unpleasant. I'll refuse to sign any sale, demand my cut if you refinance, have guests over, play loud music, cook whatever I want, and come and go as I wish." I let that settle in. "Or you could make it easier." Leonard showed interest. "How so?" "I mean, you can buy me out for what's fair based on a proper appraisal. Give me my share, and I'll walk away for good." Ava's eyes squinted. "How much would that be?" I'd already gotten the place evaluated, not wasting these past 24 hours. Its value is $380,000, making my 42% share worth $159,600. Leonard almost choked. "We don't have that kind of cash." "Then you'll need to get a loan or sell the property and split the proceeds. Either way, you'll gain freedom, and so will I." "This is blackmail," Ava hissed. "No," I said calmly. "It's just business. You aim to siphon off my retirement and Social Security for your comfort. Now, you get the house, and I get back what I invested. Everyone moves on." Ava looked desperate. "What about the care home? We've already paid the deposit." "That's on you," I replied. "Maybe you should have checked in with me before making life decisions on my behalf." Leonard was looking at his hands, finally feeling the enormity of what they'd done. "Dad, I'm truly sorry. I know that doesn't undo anything, but I need you to know I'm embarrassed by what we attempted." "Are you?" I asked. "Or just sorry you got snagged?" He met my eyes, and I saw tears starting to form. "I'm sorry for all of it. I'm sorry Ava convinced me this was okay. I'm sorry I let you down. I'm sorry for forgetting everything you taught me about doing right and what family means." For a brief moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy. This was my son after all, the boy I raised, for whom I sacrificed so much. But then, memories of him talking about my supposed mental issues and agreeing to drug me erased any flicker of pity. "I respect that you've apologized," I finally said, "but that doesn't change anything. Trust, once smashed, isn't easily mended by just words." Ava, who'd been silent for a bit, jumped in with a cold, shrewd tone. "Fine, we'll buy you out, but it'll take some time to get the money together." "You've got 30 days, I declared. "After that, I'll charge rent for my room and we'll have friends over often. Don't forget, this is my place too." "30 days isn't long enough," Leonard objected. "You're offering more than what you originally planned," I shot back, reminding him about the little tactic he had cooked up on Monday to send me packing to Sunset Manor. Leonard winced, probably regretting those words now that they were being thrown back at him. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," I went on. "I've got everything documented and squared away. You so much as try to push me out or interfere in my affairs, I'll have you in court faster than you can say elder abuse, financial exploitation, conspiracy to commit fraud. You realize those are serious crimes, right? People don't turn a blind eye to stuff like that anymore." I noticed Ava studying me as if seeing a whole new person. You two thought you had it all planned out. I just did what needed doing. I set the record straight. It's what you'd expect from someone who's managed to make it through 67 years of life. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows in the living room. What should have been a peaceful Thanksgiving turned into what felt like the aftermath of a battle, which, to be honest, it was. I'm heading to my room, I said, standing up. Might want to get on those phone calls. The bank, mortgage companies, whoever. The clock's ticking. As I headed down the hallway, Ava yelled, "You're gonna regret this, Edward. Family's all you got left." I paused to look at both of them sitting there, their little scheme in shambles. "No, Ava. The mistake I made was thinking I still had a family," I replied gently. "Turns out I was more like a bank account to you two, but now I see it for what it is." As I shut my bedroom door, Ava's voice came through loud and clear, laying into Leonard for screwing up and not having the guts. Their marriage, which once seemed like a rock, was already cracking under the pressure. Good, let them fight it out. I had my own future to sort out. The next 3 weeks felt like a stalemate. Leonard and Ava drifted around the house like ghosts, only talking to me if they had to, nervously making calls out of earshot. I picked up bits of their frantic discussions, fruitless chats with banks, heated talks about credit scores and loan apps, and endless squabbles over who messed up where. As for me, I was on top of things. I organized my life with the same sharpness I once used to run the mill. I opened a fresh bank account at another branch, redirected my pension and Social Security over there. Movers came out to help pack up Martha's stuff, which I'd avoided doing because of old sentimental ties. Treated myself to a reliable Honda, something to rely on for whatever came next. Most importantly, I called up Frank, an old pal who retired from the mill a bit before I did. He'd lost his wife 6 months prior and was finding it tough going it alone in their spacious home where they'd spent 42 years. "Eddie," he greeted me when I rang. "Been thinking about you. How's it going with the kids?" "Messy," I confessed. "Actually, that's why I'm calling. How'd you feel about a roommate?" By the end of our talk, Frank and I had struck a deal that worked for us both. He was alone in a 4-bedroom house with no mortgage, while I had a payout coming in to cover my share of the utilities and groceries, letting me stand on my own 2 feet. We'd been side by side for 3 decades, through strike talks and factory closures. We didn't need to explain ourselves much. He got it. Meanwhile, Leonard and Ava were finally waking up to how fragile their financial footing was. Without my pension to fall back on, with the mortgage looming large, they were financially stretched to the bone. Leonard's management job wasn't enough to keep the household running smoothly, and Ava hadn't brought in any income since their wedding 3 years back. The life they'd built around my money was coming undone, fast. One gray December morning, about a month after Thanksgiving, Leonard knocked lightly on my door. "Dad, we need to talk," he said. As I opened up, he was standing there looking like he'd been dragged through a hedge backward. His clothes were disheveled, hair greasy and all over the place, and his eyes carried that unmistakable weight of sleepless nights. "So, what's bothering you?" I asked, even though I had a feeling I already knew. "Well, we're hitting a wall with the loan," he confessed. "No bank wants to approve us because we owe too much compared to what we make, especially since Ava's not bringing in any income right now." He let the words fade, looking down at his feet. I waited in the quiet for him to say more. After a moment, he went on. "We've been chatting with some real estate folks, but even if we sell our place, once we pay off the mortgage and all the fees, there won't be enough left to pay you back what we owe." "Got it," I replied, keeping my cool. "And what does Ava think about this mess?" Leonard's face showed a blend of hurt and shame. "Ava's talking about going to court, trying to dispute the ownership papers, saying they were signed under some duress or something like that. And you? What's your take? I asked, looking deeply into his eyes. His gaze met mine, and I saw a flicker of the boy he once was after losing his mom all those years ago. I feel like I've already lost you as a father, so taking you to court won't change a thing, he said. For a brief moment, I felt that old connection between us, but then memories of his voice plotting to drug me crept back in. What are you thinking we should do, Leonard? He looked confused. I'm not sure, he admitted. I was hoping you'd have an idea. I took a good look at him. I saw he was genuinely sorry, but also scared. Leonard's always been too easy to sway, first by his grief, then by wanting to keep Ava happy, and now by the fear of losing everything. I might have something in mind, I offered, but you're not gonna like it. His eyes lit up with a tiny bit of hope. What is it? Ava's got to go. That flicker of hope died instantly. Dad, I can't just... She's been the issue, Leonard. You were a good guy before her, and maybe you'll be again once she's out of the picture. But she's my wife. And she's the one who pushed you to go against your own father for money, I said bluntly. She's also seeing some guy named Rick while banking on my pension for her fling. Leonard went pale. What do you mean? Remember those messages I have? She's been seeing this Rick guy for a while, making plans with him once the finances were under her control. Did you really think she'd stick around with no money? I showed him the screenshots on my phone. Leonard read through them quietly, his face shifting from shock to hurt, and then to a steely anger I'd never seen in him. She's been planning to ditch me, he murmured. Once she got what she wanted, I confirmed. You were just a pawn, a means to get her hands on my money in this house. Leonard slumped into the chair by my window, burying his face in his hands. I've been such an idiot. You just chose the wrong woman, I said softly, in a tone I hadn't used in a while. It happens to the best. What's my next move? He asked. You get a divorce, I advised. File because of her cheating, and use those texts as proof. Then we'll come up with a new agreement. Skeptically, Leonard asked, What kind of agreement? I'll wipe out the debt if you give me full ownership of the house, I proposed. You can stay here while you get back on your feet, but the deal is the house is mine now. No more pretending we're on equal ground when I'm footing the bills. And what then? You choose who you want to be moving forward, I said. A man who keeps his promises and does right by his family, or one who lies and schemes to get ahead. Leonard sat quietly, staring out the window, thinking about his next steps. He'd reminisce about enjoying that backyard he always dreamed about while I was stuck in a nursing home. But if they fight the divorce, I told him to let them try. I have plenty of evidence of her cheating and mishandling money to win in court. Plus, she doesn't have any real source of income or assets to fight with. And as for Rick, well, what's going to be his move? He's tangled with a married woman plotting to take her father-in-law's money. Think he'll stick around when it gets tough? Leonard gave a slow nod as he began piecing it all together. Do you really think she'll bolt? He asked. Yeah, I think Ava's the kind who takes off when things stop benefiting her, I said. Give her a couple of weeks dealing with those attorney bills and the public embarrassment, she'll be gone. Right then, our conversation got interrupted by the loud bang of the front door. Ava's return from what was likely another shopping spree was hard to miss, probably piling more expenses onto credit cards they couldn't afford. Leonard, she shouted from downstairs, sounding eager for a word. Leonard and I shared a quick look. Now or never, I muttered. He exhaled deeply and stood up. Guess it's time to figure out who I really am, he said. As we descended the steps together, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, a newfound respect for my son. Not love, not yet. That would take time to mend, if it ever could, but respect for a man ready to own up to his decisions. In the kitchen stood Ava, encircled by high-end shopping bags. As soon as we walked in, she eyed us with distrust, aware we were on the same side against her. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice heavy with suspicion. Leonard approached the countertop, clutching his laptop. "I've got something to show you, Ava." "Leonard, what is this about?" But the realization in her eyes began to settle as she edged slowly toward the door, sensing a shift. "I'm showing you some texts," he continued, bringing the laptop to her attention. "Messages between you and Rick about your plans after getting control of Dad's finances." Ava's face transitioned through the gamut of emotions I'd seen on Leonard's face earlier: shock, disbelief, fear, and, eventually, a cold calculation. "Those are fake," she blurted out. "He's manipulating you, Leonard. Don't you see?" "Are they fake?" Leonard asked softly. "Are the messages about leaving me once you got what you wanted fake? Are the escape plans with Rick fake?" Ava's eyes darted back and forth, knowing her usual tricks wouldn't work this time. Her voice shifted, more raw and honest than I'd ever heard. "Fine. I was planning to leave, but can you blame me? Leonard, look at our lives, struggling to pay bills, taking care of your exhausted father, stuck in this monotonous suburban nightmare. So stealing from him and ditching me was your solution?" I asked. "I thought it was about taking what's rightfully ours and starting fresh somewhere better, with someone who has ambitions." Leonard quietly nodded, recognizing truths he'd feared facing. "I want you gone," he declared. "You can't just throw me out. I'm your wife." "Not for long," Leonard replied, his voice unwavering. "I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. I've got adultery and financial abuse as reasons. Dad's documented all of it." For the first time since I'd known her, Ava genuinely looked scared. "Leonard, we can fix this. I'll end it with Rick. Let's try to make it work." "It's too late," he said. "Without me, you'll have nothing," she retaliated, desperation thick in her tone. "You'll be broke, lose the house, wreck your credit, and end up taking care of your father alone." Leonard looked at her for a moment, then at me. "Maybe," he replied, "but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror." Ava's desperation quickly turned into anger. "You're both pathetic," she sneered. "A spineless man and a nosy old fool. You deserve each other." She stormed out, the sound of her stomping echoing as she likely tossed her belongings into bags. Standing there in silence, Leonard and I listened to the drawers getting yanked open, doors slamming shut. "How are you holding up?" I asked. "Terrified," he confessed, "but also relieved, like I've finally got room to breathe." "Take it easy," I said. Within hours, Ava was gone. She packed up 3 suitcases and left us with a storm of threats about what her lawyer planned to do. She also abandoned around $15,000 in credit card debt and a car lease she couldn't afford, but at least she was out of our lives. That night, Leonard and I ended up back in the living room where it all started, echoing the scene from a month ago. The vibe had shifted, maybe not comfortable but honest in a way it hadn't been before. "Sorry, Dad," Leonard whispered. "I know I keep saying it, but I really mean it this time." "I believe you," I replied. "But the bigger question is, what do you plan to do about it?" "Whatever it takes," he vowed. "No matter how long it takes." I nodded. "We'll see." It wasn't full forgiveness yet, but it was a start. Fast forward 6 months, and there I was on Frank's back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in beautiful oranges and pinks. It reminded me of the sunsets Martha and I used to enjoy from our apartment balcony. There was a peace within me that I hadn't felt in years, not the tired peace of giving up, but the fulfilling quiet of someone who's fought the fight and won. Frank strolled out of the kitchen, balancing 2 beers and a couple of his famous grilled cheese sandwiches. At 71, he moved a bit slower than before, but retirement had been good to him. Over the past few months, we'd settled into a comfortable routine, just two old friends enjoying each other's company without needing to talk all the time. "Did Leonard call today?" Frank asked, easing into his chair with a sigh. "He did this morning," I said, taking a beer with gratitude. "The divorce was finalized yesterday." "How's he handling it?" "Better than expected. Ava tried to take half the house, but once her lawyer saw the evidence of her cheating and financial mess, they settled fast. She walked away with just her baggage and her debts." Frank chuckled. "Karma's a funny thing, isn't it?" "Certainly is," I nodded. "Leonard has been working day and night to pay off the credit card debt she left, but he's finding it rewarding to work honestly again. Honestly, I've been impressed with Leonard's transformation over the months. Without Ava's chaos, he's becoming the man I'd always hoped he'd be. By day, he manages a local hardware store, and by evening, he's freelancing as a bookkeeper. It might not sound fancy, but it's honest work, and he's finding pride in it again. He even started paying back the money they took, $500 at a time. It wasn't necessary. My pension and Social Security covered me fine, but for Leonard, it was about more than money. Some debts run deeper than financial. "Guess what I heard today?" Frank said, sipping his beer with a mischievous glint. "Mrs. Patterson told me Ava's been calling neighbors, trying to get sympathy, claiming you and Leonard plotted against her." "What did Mrs. Patterson say to that?" "She told Ava that anyone trying to push a good man like you into a nursing home against his will got what they deserved." Frank grinned. Ava wasn't thrilled with that response. I wasn't surprised Ava was still playing the victim. Leonard said she'd moved in with Rick for a bit, but their relationship fizzled fast when Rick realized she came with no cash. Last Leonard heard, she was crashing with her sister in another state, still moaning about being treated unfairly. Some people never learn from their mistakes. My phone buzzed, and I smiled, seeing it was a message from Leonard. "Dinner with Sarah tomorrow night. Thought you should know." Sarah was a nurse at the clinic where Leonard went for counseling. She was a widow with two teenagers. From what Leonard said, she was everything Ava wasn't: kind, dedicated, and not focused on material things. They were taking it slow, showing a maturity in Leonard I hadn't seen in years. "Good news?" Frank asked, spotting my grin. "Leonard's got a date tomorrow," I said. "With Sarah, the nurse." I'd told Frank about Sarah before. Living together for 6 months meant we'd shared most of our important stories. "I think this one's different. You sound hopeful." "I am," I admitted. It had been ages since I saw Leonard genuinely at peace. Not that shallow joy aimed at pleasing others, but true, heartfelt happiness. Frank turned to me, pondering, and asked, "And what about you? Are you happy?" It was a question that really made me pause and think about the roller coaster of a year I'd just been through: betrayals, fraught confrontations, and the slow, careful rebuilding of my life. It hadn't been easy, but it was necessary. "Yeah," I finally said, realizing it was true. "I think I am." Living with Frank showed me a return of independence that I hadn't known had lingered under the surface. We split the bills and enjoyed each other's company, but the best part was not being anyone's burden anymore. I found myself cooking when I felt like it, hitting the hay when I wanted, and spending my money on things that brought me joy, not on fulfilling someone else's whims. Even more so, I reconnected with buddies from the old mill, friends I hadn't seen in what felt like forever while I played the role of the perfect dad and granddad to people who took it for granted. Now we met for coffee twice a week, and every Friday night a poker game was hosted. For the first time since Martha passed away, I felt my social life was truly mine. "You know what's ironic?" I mentioned to Frank. "I might have been okay with their plan if they'd just been honest with me about moving me into a care home, treating me with dignity, and letting me be part of the decision. I might have even agreed. The house did feel too big after Martha's passing. I was lonely, overwhelmed with maintenance, and worried about falling ill or having an accident. A part of me acknowledged that maybe they were right. I did need more help than I'd admit, but they never asked me. Instead, they made the decision for me, lied to me, stole from me, and planned to drug me into compliance. They saw me as an issue to be dealt with, not as a person with feelings. For a moment, Frank was quiet, watching a cardinal alight on the bird feeder we'd installed on the old oak tree. "My daughter had a similar idea about me after Helen passed," he finally said. "She was concerned about me being alone in this big house." "What did you say to her?" I asked. "I told her I'd consider it when I was good and ready, but I wasn't ready that moment. She respected that." He chuckled, adding, "Having you around showed her there are other ways for us older folks to get by." She stopped mentioning the nursing home. "Good," I replied. "Everybody deserves the right to decide their own way of living." As the sun started to set, I couldn't help but think of Martha. She would have been horrified by Leonard and Ava's scheming, but I hoped she'd be proud of my response. Martha was always the tough, protective one in our marriage. Standing up for myself now invoked her courage in me. "Edward," Frank called out, pulling me from my thoughts. "I'm really glad you're here. This place felt too empty after Helen." "I am too," I replied truthfully. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. It was Leonard's number, a rare occurrence since he usually just texted unless something was urgent. "Dad," his voice came through, sounding a mix of excitement and anxiety. "What's going on, son?" I queried. "I have something to ask. It's about Sarah." A smile slowly formed on my face. "Go on," I encouraged. "I want to propose to her. I realize it's only been half a year since the divorce, but we've discussed it, and we're ready. I wanted to get your blessing first." This caught me by surprise. The Leonard I remembered would have just announced his decision, likely after Ava had set everything in motion. This newfound thoughtfulness and respect were refreshing and long overdue. "Tell me about her," I suggested. Leonard was eager to share. "She's nothing like Ava," he assured me. "She's independent, hardworking, handles her finances. She's been raising her kids mostly on her own since her husband died in Afghanistan, and they're remarkable, respectful, and responsible." "What does she think about your situation? The debts and trying to rebuild?" I pressed. "She respects it," Leonard replied. "She says she'd rather be with someone who's working on making things right than someone who's never faced challenges. She's not after financial support, she wants a partner." I took a moment to let that sink in. A partner? That was such a significant shift from what Leonard had with Ava, where he was mostly a provider while she... So, how do her kids feel about everything? "They're kind of on edge about it, which I honestly think is pretty sharp of them. Their mom's been flying solo for about 4 years now, and they're just looking out for her. Even with their concerns, they've been nothing but courteous, and I can tell we're slowly but surely earning their trust." "And how are you dealing with the idea of being the stepdad?" Leonard hesitated a moment. He confessed he was both nervous and excited. These kids have faced some real challenges, losing their dad and watching their mom go through difficult patches. I want to be a rock for them, to bring stability instead of more chaos. The way he was talking was incredible. This wasn't the same person who once thought slipping his dad some tranquilizers was the solution to his problems. "You've got my stamp of approval," I finally said. "But more importantly, I admire you. You've become the man I always hoped you'd grow into." I could almost hear Leonard pause to breathe through the phone. "Thanks, Dad. That really means a lot. When are you planning to pop the question?" "Tomorrow night. I finally saved up for a ring. It may not be flashy, but it's full of meaning. I want this to be just right." After we hung up, Frank was giving me a look, anticipating what I'd say. Good news? It's the greatest, I told him. I think my son is finally maturing. As the evening turned into night and the first stars began to twinkle, I felt a peace I never knew before. Our family had crumbled and then formed itself into something new and authentic. Leonard was becoming a man I could truly be proud of, and I was living a life that was genuinely mine. This wasn't the ending I foresaw after that eavesdropped conversation on Thanksgiving. It was better, because when you stop trying to squeeze yourself into others' expectations, you discover who you really are. And if you're really fortunate, the people who truly matter will figure it out too. The old me, who used to compromise his dignity for some fantasy of family peace, was gone. In his place stood a man who recognized his own worth and wouldn't accept anything less than what he deserved. And that man was finally, truly free.